Hello and welcome to Lesson 7, where we are going to look at what I think is the most important part of the email, the subject line. The subject line is the most important part of an email, in my opinion, because it's got to do so many things. And as we go through the general rules behind me, I'll be explaining all of those things the subject line has got to do. But let's start off with the basics. When you send an email, you have to include a subject line. And there are many reasons for this, but the obvious one is that if you receive an email and it has an empty subject line, you don't really want to open it. You're a little bit worried. What's inside? Is it a virus? Could it be a security problem? So very often when I get an email without a subject line, I just delete it. It goes into the bin. Now, if you send an email without a subject line to your reader, what do you think your reader is going to do? Do you think your reader is going to see that email and think, okay, I'll open that up? Of course not. The reader will see the email, will have the same concerns that you do, delete it, and then get on with their daily work. So that means your carefully drafted email is not going to be read. So we have to include a subject line because we want the reader to open it up. Now, let's get into a little bit more detail. Now, the main job of a subject line is to summarize what you have written in the email. And because it has to do that, it's a good idea to write the subject line after you have written the email. That way, you can reread your email and you can think, how can I summarize my email in a few words? If you write the subject line before you write the email, then there is a possibility you will start writing about other things which your subject line does not reflect. Now, if I am a reader and I get a subject line that says, the email will talk about this, and then I start reading the email, and the email then talks about many other different things, then I start to get annoyed. You're wasting my time. Why are you telling me this? I opened up the email to see this, but now you're telling me that. So an accurate subject line is one of the main things, or a subject line which accurately reflects what you have written is one of the main things a subject line has to do. But a subject line has to do other things as well. A subject line has got to get the reader's attention. If you think of a subject line like a headline in a newspaper, then you're thinking about a subject line in the correct way. So newspapers or online newspapers will have headlines, and those headlines are there to attract you, to make you want to read the story. Your subject line should be like that for your email. Using one word or two words, or using a word which is not very exact or not very precise, will not make me want to read the email. We'll have a look at some examples very, very shortly. If I see a subject line which is punchy, memorable, recognizable, then I'm more likely to open it up and find out what's going on. And you can see there behind me that the subject line has got to be memorable and recognizable. And what I mean by that is not to use capital letters or use funny symbols or to do anything like that. It means that the subject line is written so in 2 weeks' time or in 2 months' time, I can easily find that email. If there is an email with a subject line invoice, I'm not going to find that in 2 months' time. But if I see an email with a subject line, invoices unpaid for January, February, March, then I'm much more likely to find that email again in the future. And of course, The more information you include in a subject line, the easier it is to search for that email when you have to search for an email on Outlook or Thunderbird or whatever email program you use. So there are many things that the subject line has got to do. It's got to reflect the message, it's got to be recognizable, it's got to be attractive, and it's got to make me, as the reader, open the email so I read what's inside. So, people sometimes think that writing a tweet is difficult. Writing a good subject line is much harder than writing a tweet. But with practice, you can get better at it. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and you can see at the bottom there, this is what people sometimes do, that they write messages to each other in the subject line. So the body of the email is blank, but everything is communicated in the subject line. This is an informal way of communicating. You do not want to do this business to business. It also depends on the culture of your company, whether this is acceptable or not. So there are lots of rules to this. Some people like it, some people don't like it. Some people are happy with it, some people not. So if you communicate in this way, you've got to make sure that it's going to be okay and you won't have any problems. Okay, I said we are going to have a look at some bad examples, so here you can see them behind me, and they are typical bad examples. A subject line that just says meeting tells me nothing. A subject line that says invoice or campaign or project tell me nothing at all. There's nothing about those words that makes me want to find out more, or I don't know if it affects me. If you work in a big company and there are lots of emails going around, lots of people CC'd in, and you just see a subject line like that, you're not going to open that up because it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't connect to you. But if we wrote a better subject line, for example, 1 p.m. meeting cancelled, moved tomorrow at 3 p.m, then suddenly I'm much more engaged. Suddenly I go, aha, okay, now I know what's going on. That talks to me. I better read that email. Or request to pay unpaid invoice from November 2019. Okay, I know about that. I didn't deal with that. Okay, I better get on with it. So those subject lines talk to me, and already before I read the email, I know what the email is going to be about, and I'm already thinking about what I should do. Latest data from our spring marketing campaign. Okay, much better than just campaign, for example. Much more precise, much more detail. Project Blue will not be completed before the deadline. Straight away, as I said, the subject line is telling me lots and lots of information, and you should not be afraid of using up to 10, maybe even 15 words in a subject line to communicate what the email is about. Okay, time for some questions. Have a look behind me and ask yourself, are these good subject lines? Read through them quickly. Pause the video, and then when you're ready, unpause the video and I'll talk you through them. Okay, so let's have a look at these emails. For the first three, these are all bad subject lines because they don't tell me anything at all. Last month I got thousands of emails. Last month's email doesn't connect to me. I don't know what the email was about. I don't know who it was from. Why should I open up this email? Invoice not paid. Which invoice? To whom? For how much? What did we buy? This information will make me go, aha, okay, I need to do something about that. Invoice not paid? Not my problem. Meeting cancelled? Which meeting? With who was involved in the meeting? Where was the meeting? Has it been rescheduled? all of this information could be in a subject line, and it's more likely to make me read the email. Client got in touch with question. Okay, a few more words, but it's that same issue of not knowing what's going on or not knowing if it affects me. Is this my client? Is this someone else's client? Is this a question that I can deal with? Is it a question that someone else can deal with? So unless I see anything that connects to me as the reader, why should I open this email? We won the court case. It's good news. It sounds like a headline. Am I involved? What's that court case got to do with me? If it's nothing to do with me, but there was more information, then I could ignore the email and I could let someone else enjoy and celebrate that information. It's not relevant to me, but the subject line tells me that. But if the subject line makes it clear it's something to do with me, I'll open it. I'm happy to celebrate. And then lastly, change of law, it will affect us. I'm sure you have the same questions in your mind as I do. Which law was changed? How will it affect us? And maybe you might even have questions about time or cost. So how quickly will it change us? How much will it cost us? That information will make me react a lot faster than something which doesn't tell me anything at all. Okay, that's why I think this is the most important part of an email. The subject line is only a few words, but those few words have got to work in so many different ways. And of course, they've got to tell me as the reader, I've got to open the email because it's relevant to me. It's really easy in a modern business environment where you're working hard and you've got to work fast to not see emails. And subject lines are something that you always see. So if you see a subject line that connects to you straight away, it's going to be read and it's going to be actioned. Someone will do something about it. Something like invoice, you're wasting your time. Okay, so now we've had a look at all of the elements of an email. And hopefully that information is still fresh in your head. So what I'd like you to do now is go on to lessons 8 and 9 and redraft some emails, trying to remember all of the points that we've gone through in the last few emails.